It was the first week of December, and our little neighborhood in Aspen Ridge looked like something out of a postcard. Snow blanketed the rooftops. Christmas lights twinkled along every eave, and the smell of pine filled the air. Every year, I went all out with my Christmas display. A glowing nativity scene, synchronized lights dancing to carols, and a 20-foot Santa that waved at passing cars. My kids loved it. The neighbors loved it. Everyone except Karen. Karen lived 3 houses down. She was the self-appointed queen of the HOA, always on patrol with her clipboard and permanent scowl. Last year, she fined my neighbor for having too many snowflakes on his lawn. This year, her target was me. I'd just finished adjusting the star on top of my display when I heard her, voice slicing through the cold air. "Thomas, that monstrosity violates HOA Regulation 14C, excessive lighting after 9 p.m. I turned around, my breath misting in the freezing air. "Karen, it's 6:30, and it's Christmas, for crying out loud." Her lips tightened. "Holiday spirit does not override community standards." I smiled politely, but my patience was wearing thin. The community seems pretty happy about it. Maybe you should try being part of it instead of policing it. Her eyes narrowed to slits. "You'll regret that." I didn't think much of it then. Karen made empty threats every week. But the next night, as snow began to fall thicker, I heard a crash outside, followed by the sound of glass shattering. I rushed to the window and saw her, Karen, in her robe and slippers, swinging a metal shovel into my Christmas display. "Karen, what the hell are you doing?" I shouted, sprinting out into the snow. "You're disturbing the peace," she screamed, smashing the glowing reindeer. "You're ruining the neighborhood." I grabbed her arm to stop her, and she yanked away, stumbling into the snowbank. My wife came running out, horrified. The rest of the neighbors peeked from behind curtains, too shocked to intervene. When Karen finally stormed back to her house, leaving behind a trail of broken lights and shattered decorations, I was furious, but not as furious as the storm clouds brewing above. The snow was coming down heavier than I'd seen in years. I didn't know it yet, but by morning, nature was about to deliver justice in a way I never could. By dawn, the world outside was buried under a thick white silence. The storm had raged through the night, piling almost 2 feet of snow over everything. The streetlights were half buried. Cars looked like sleeping beasts, and my once vibrant Christmas display lay crushed beneath the frozen weight, a tangle of wire, shattered bulbs, and snow-caked Santa pieces. I stood at the window, coffee mug in hand, staring at the destruction. My wife, Emily, wrapped her robe tighter and sighed. "She really did a number on it," she muttered. "You should call the HOA or the police." I shook my head. "No point. She is the HOA." Emily gave a humorless laugh. "Then maybe the police." But before I could answer, something outside caught my eye. Movement at Karen's house. Her front door burst open, and she stumbled out in a coat thrown hastily over pajamas. She was shouting into her phone, waving frantically at her roof. I squinted through the snow glare, and then I saw it. A massive crack had formed in the overhang above her porch. The snow piled on her roof was heavy, too heavy. The ice had built up overnight, and her gutters were sagging under the weight. "Emily," I said quietly, "look at her roof." Karen was still yelling into her phone. Probably to the HOA's maintenance contractor. She kept pointing, oblivious to how dangerous it looked. I stepped onto the porch, crunching through the snow, and shouted, "Karen! You need to get away from the house, now!" She whipped around, eyes full of venom. "Don't tell me what to do on my own property." I tried again, louder. "Karen, I'm serious. That roof can't take—" Crack! The sound was like a gunshot. A giant section of her roof collapsed inward, sending an avalanche of snow, shingles, and gutter debris crashing down right where she had been standing seconds ago. She screamed, stumbling backward into the yard, narrowly missing the falling wreckage. Emily gasped beside me, clutching my arm. For a moment, everything was still except the faint hiss of snow sliding off what remained of the roof. Karen stood there, soaked and shaking, staring at the ruin of her own home. Her phone was gone, buried somewhere in the white heap. I ran over to make sure she was okay, though part of me couldn't ignore the irony. The same storm that had crushed my Christmas spirit had just delivered her a dose of humility. "Karen," I said, kneeling beside her, "are you hurt?" She blinked up at me, dazed. My roof. My house." And then, for the first time since I'd known her, Karen didn't have a single rule to quote. By noon, the neighborhood was buzzing like a hive. Word of Karen's roof collapse had spread faster than wildfire. Neighbors who usually hid behind curtains were suddenly out with snow shovels and coffee mugs, pretending to help, but really there to watch the drama unfold. Karen's front yard looked like a construction zone. Chunks of wood and shingles poked out of the snow like jagged bones. The local news van had already arrived. Apparently, someone had posted photos of the collapse on the community Facebook page. And guess whose house was clearly visible in the background? With a destroyed Christmas display? Mine. As a reporter approached me, microphone in hand, I could feel Karen's glare drilling into the side of my head. She stood beside the rubble, wrapped in a thick blanket, her hair a frizzy mess. "Sir," the reporter said, "were you aware of any structural problems with your neighbor's home before this happened?" I shook my head. "No, but I warned her this morning when I saw the roof sagging." She didn't listen. The reporter's eyes widened. "You tried to warn her?" Karen stomped over, snow crunching under her boots. "Don't you dare make me look like some kind of fool!" She snapped at the reporter. "This man has been harassing me for months with his illegal Christmas circus. That's what started all this!" Her voice was shrill enough to make everyone freeze. The camera guy lowered his rig for a moment, unsure whether to keep rolling. I exhaled slowly. "Karen, my display didn't cause your roof to collapse. That was the snow, and maybe your neglect." Her face twisted. "Neglect? She stopped herself mid-word, realizing every microphone and camera was still pointed at her. But the damage was done. A few neighbors exchanged smirks. One even whispered, "Karma's a snowstorm." By late afternoon, insurance inspectors arrived, followed by the HOA's emergency board meeting, which, of course, Karen tried to chair despite the chaos, sitting in her car with the engine running for heat. She demanded everyone stay professional. But something had shifted in the neighborhood. People weren't afraid of her anymore when she started blaming me again for distracting the board with that ridiculous Santa. One of the members, a quiet older man named Ray, finally spoke up. "Karen," he said evenly, "maybe it's time you stopped worrying about everyone else's decorations and started fixing your own house. You could have heard a snowflake fall after that." Karen said nothing, just stared out the window at her half-collapsed home, the same one she'd lorded over us for years. And as the sun dipped below the icy rooftops, I realized something. The storm might have destroyed my Christmas display, but it had also melted away Karen's power. The days after the storm were surreal. Karen's house was a disaster zone, snow and debris piled high in her yard. She stayed mostly inside, wrapped in blankets, peering out the windows with a mix of disbelief and fury. Meanwhile, my family and I began the painstaking process of salvaging what we could from our own Christmas display. Broken lights, snapped reindeer legs, and half-crushed Santa figures slowly became a puzzle we could rebuild. Neighbors started showing up, offering spare bulbs, extension cords, and even extra figures from their own displays. By midweek, the front yard looked almost festive again, despite the wreckage that still lay in the street. There was laughter this time. Genuine laughter, not the tense, polite kind that had filled the neighborhood before. Children ran around, tossing snowballs and helping with untangling lights, and the air smelled sweet with cocoa and pine. Karen, on the other hand, stayed behind her barricade of caution tape and snow-covered debris. Occasionally, she'd emerge to glare at us, muttering about HOA violations, but her voice lacked the authority it once carried. One evening, I saw her attempting to shovel snow from her driveway, an effort that was half-hearted and clumsy. A neighbor offered assistance, and for the first time she reluctantly accepted. There was a shift, subtle but unmistakable. She was no longer the untouchable enforcer of every tiny rule. As for my Christmas display, by Christmas Eve, it was brighter than ever. The lights synchronized perfectly, Santa waved with vigor, and the nativity scene glowed warmly in the night. Neighbors came by in small groups, snapping photos, sipping cocoa, and marveling at the restoration. My kids squealed with delight, running around the yard as if nothing had ever gone wrong. Then, just as the clock struck 7, I noticed something through the falling snow. Karen, standing at the edge of her yard, holding a small crooked string of lights. She placed them in the snow, took a step back, and hesitated. My heart skipped a beat. Could it be? A small, hesitant smile appeared on her face. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The neighborhood had survived the chaos, the snowstorm, and even Karen's wrath. The Christmas lights sparkled like a beacon of resilience and community. And in a quiet, ironic twist, it was the very storm that had brought a sense of humility to Karen that helped all of us. Remember what Christmas was really about? Family, laughter, and finding joy even when the world seemed determined to crush it. As I stood in the yard, sipping my cocoa and watching the lights dance across the snow, I realized something profound. The storm had destroyed my display, but it had rebuilt something far more important. A neighborhood united, a family stronger, and yes, even a Karen slightly less terrifying. And for the first time in years, I felt that Christmas magic had truly returned.